Welcome in everyone, this is Sean with MTG808 Jr. and today we're going to be taking a look at a sweet red-black control list for Standard Pauper. However, before we do that, just want to jump over here to our Patreon page and let everyone know that we have a Patreon page. If you want to support Youth Magic on Oahu, if you want to support the creation of Standard Pauper content like this here video, please consider becoming a patron. The scholarship tournaments that we're hoping to run twice a year, if we get to our 400 a month goal, that's all funded off of Patreon money. So if you want to make a positive impact in the Magic community, please consider becoming a patron. Alright, so as I said, red-black control is the name of the deck today. I just got back from Standard Pauper F&M at one of the local shops here on Oahu, and I played a list close to this. I made some tweaks to it since getting to play it, but I just wanted to play a Ghitu Chronicler deck. I've been playing lots of Ghitu Chronicler, or I've been brewing a lot of Ghitu Chronicler decks lately, and I think the best target for Ghitu Chronicler is just Wander and Death. So there is going to be a link to this text description of the deck in the description, but for now we're going to take a look over here on Magic Online. So this is a control deck. We're playing 24 lands because we do just want to hit our mana every turn. Basically, the deck is trying to loop Ghitu Chroniclers, start looping Wander and Deaths or getting back Dark Bargains. If you really need to, you can get back a removal spell, but you want to get back your card advantage engines and then just bury them in card advantage. So that's kind of the goal of the deck. So we wanted to make sure that we played enough spells to make Ghitu Chronicler good. We have tons of spells, so that is not a problem. Let's see, we have 6, 1 draw, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So there's 18 targets for Ghitu Chronicler, no shortage of targets in the yard. The other card that this deck is kind of revolving around here is Wander and Death. 1 black, 2 colorless sorcery, return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and you can cycle it away for 2. So basically the loop is Ghitu Chronicler can get back Wander and Death, then if Ghitu Chronicler dies, or if you have another one in your graveyard, you can Wander and Death to get back Ghitu Chronicler and another creature. So as long as your opponent is killing your Ghitu Chroniclers, then it's an infinite loop. Or not an infinite loop, but an unbreakable loop, where you're netting an extra card each time, so whatever creature you get back, So we wanted to play enough creatures to make Wander and Death good, besides with Ghitu Chronicler. So I'm playing some number of Fanatical Firebrands, like it's just a 1 mana removal spell basically, but you can get it back with Wander and Death. Dusk Legion Zealot is an MVP. You just play it on turn 2, you might get a chump block in, you might even trade for something, you're going to draw a card off of it, and then when it dies, you can get it back with Wander and Death. This guy really helps make sure that you're hitting your land drops, helps you kind of dig for your value cards. This guy is quietly one of the MVPs of the deck, and goes especially well with Wander and Death. Casting Wander and Death to just get back 2 of these guys feels great. We are playing 2 Wasteland Scorpions to up our creature count, and Wasteland Scorpion also is, this deck is very, 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 very weak to hexproof creatures. We're playing 18 not 18, we're playing 11 spot removal spells, none of which can hit hexproof creatures. So if your opponent plays a Jade Light Guardian or a Striped River Winder or a Soul of the Rapids, then this deck is in some trouble because it has a hard time kind of closing out games. Like, we have some big creatures here, but nothing that can like punch through a Striped River Winder very easily. So Wasteland Scorpion, just having a couple, they are kind of slow, so you can cycle them if you need to. Cycling Wasteland Scorpion or Horror of the Broken Lands in the early game is fine because we have Wander and Death. You want to have a second creature in the yard when you start looping Ghitu Chronicler. Or just getting back 2 Horror of the Broken Lands is similar to getting back 2 Dusk Legion Zealots, right? You're just churning through cards in your deck. So, having cycling is relevant. Having Death Touch gives us outs to hexproof creatures, unless of course they have flying. So those are kind of like our cheap creatures that we're most likely to get back with Wander and Death. And then we have a couple expensive creatures. Ghitu Chronicler, of course, is a 6-drop in this deck. I almost never play this on 2 unless I'm super mono screwed. I can't ever see myself playing this on 2. So the kind of top end creatures here, we've got a split. Tonight in FNM I was playing 4 Horror of the Broken Lands and 2 Windgrace Acolytes, but after seeing how the deck was kind of playing out, I think that Queen's Agent would be very good. So Horror of the Broken Lands, as I explained, is just very good with Wander and Death. You know, it's a 5-mana 4/4. Sometimes the pump ability comes up, like not that often. We aren't even playing the deserts. This deck is just so mana hungry that I was playing deserts at FNM tonight, and I think I cycled a desert once, and I kind of regretted it. I wished I just played it as a land, because, you know, the deck wants to get to the point where you're casting Ghitu Chronicler and then casting Wander and Death in the same turn. So you just want to play all your lands. And having them come to play tapped, I think, is valuable, whereas, you know, the deserts are in the deck to protect against flood. But I feel like having your lands come into play untapped is more important, because this deck kind of wants to draw a whole bunch of lands. But anyway, so the point I was making is that Horror of the Broken Lands, the pump ability is not going to come up that often, but the fact that you can cycle this in the early game, and then get it back with Wander and Death, that's just great. And then it's a 5-mana 4/4 that will kill your opponent eventually after you kill all their creatures. So we're playing 3 of those in this list. I honestly don't know what the correct split is here on your finishers, so any number of any of these, I think Horror of the Broken Lands is the best one, but you know, I think any of these are defensible, and I just wanted to include a mix here to show what was possible. So the second one that we have here is Windgrace Acolyte. It's a 5-mana 3/2 flying. So you know, you can end the game if the board kind of gets mucked up. Very rarely, though, does the board get mucked up with this deck. Like, you're just firing off spot removal spells on your opponent, so you know, the board doesn't really get mucked up. I guess, you know, we might want some answers to tokens in the sideboard here or something, but you know, you have enough spot removal and card advantage that the board doesn't really get mucked up. But anyway, so flying is sort of relevant, but this guy mills you for 3, which is very relevant for Wander and Death and Ghitu Chronicler. So it's like pseudo card advantage, the mill, and then gaining 3 life. You know, this deck, the life total is a resource. You're playing Dusk Legion Zealot, you're playing Dark Bargain. You know, we have some Moment of Craving to gain back life, so Windgrace Acolyte gaining us life is pretty relevant. And then the mill, as I said, is kind of like pseudo drawing cards. Queen's Agent is very similar in that sense, right? The lifelink means that, you know, hopefully we're going to gain at least 3 life off of this guy, possibly more if he connects more than once. But the Explorer, I think, plays nicely with this deck, because, as I said, this deck does want to get up to like 9, 10, 11 lands. So playing this on 6, you know, you might get a 4/4 lifelinker, you might get a 3/3 lifelinker and a land in your hand. Either way, I think that this guy is fine. You know, and then if he does die, you know, great, get him back with Wander and Death, get another Explore trigger. So I think Queen's Agent is good. The biggest knock against Queen's Agent is that it costs 6, which is where Ghitu Chronicler sits on the curve. So having I had 6 5-drops in the earlier build of this deck, and that felt nice because I could like Wander in Death, get back my 5-drops and play them the turn before I could Wander in Death and get back Ghitu Chronicler and play it in the same turn. So, you know, the curve is a consideration, but I think Queen's Agent just does all the things the deck wants it to do. Windgrace Acolyte, you know, the mill is pseudo card draw, but it's not quite card draw. So, you know, just want to put out a bunch of options there. The last card, besides the spot removal that we'll talk about here, is Dark Bargain. 4 mana instant. You know, so you can leave mana up for your removal spells if you want to. If you don't need to use it, then you can spend that mana to draw cards. Not as important as if we're playing counter spells. But you know, instant speed is nice on your card draw. I did find myself casting this during my main phase a couple times just to try to like hit lands. You know, there's a lot of cheap 1 mana interactions, so playing it main phase to try to hit a land to be able to hold up a 1 mana interaction is very relevant. But you know, this card just does what we want, what the deck wants to do. You're getting up on cards. The deck wants to bury your opponent in card advantage. This does it, right? You cast this on 4, and then you can get it back with Ghitu Chronicler. Just like make sure that you're gonna have cards in your hand while your opponent is in top deck mode. So Dark Bargain, exactly what we want to do. I'm not playing 4 because it is a little redundant with Wander in Death. So you know, we don't want too much focus on card advantage, because if we draw only these spells and no spot removal, then we'll have to mulligan. So the last thing we'll look at here is the spot removal. Playing a mix here, and I think that you know, Financial Firebrand is kind of like spot removal, but we're counting it as a creature. So the spells that we're playing a mix. 3 Magma Spray, great against the mono white creatures, Sacred Cat, Unwavering Initiate. Better than Shock. You know, this deck, you're going to win by burying your opponent in card advantage. You're not going to win by top decking Shock when your opponent is at 2. So we'd much rather exile Sacred Cat, exile Unwavering Initiate than be able to go to the face. Sheevan Fire is a 3 of as well. You know, just redundancy. The 1 mana mode on this card kills so many 2-drops, so many 3-drops. Pretty much all the 1-drops. And you know, just being able to kick it on 5 if you need to. You know, it comes up sometimes, but just a very flexible card. Playing 2 Lightning Strike. I didn't play any tonight because I just didn't have any. I was playing main deck Bombard, the 3 mana deal 4 to a creature. And that was a fine card. Most of the cards I was bombarding, though, had 3 toughness, so I think Lightning Strike is just going to be better, more mana efficient. But, you know, I don't think you want too many, because these other spells are just so niche-y relevant. And then 2 Moment of Craving. The fact that it gains this life when, as I was saying earlier, life is a resource for this deck. The fact that it gains this life is just nice. It gives us some breathing room. You know, if we stumble early or the opponent has a fast draw, just gaining that, killing a creature and gaining the 2 life is exactly where the deck wants to be. So that's the main deck. I think that this is very, very, very strong in the current metagame that we've been seeing at the youth tournaments, where almost everybody is playing a deck chock full of creatures. And very few of those creatures have hexproof. So this deck has a huge weakness to hexproof creatures, but if nobody is playing hexproof creatures, then I think that this deck is just insane. There is not enough graveyard hate to turn off the Ghitu Chronicler loop, and then, you know, you just bury your opponent in card advantage. Even if you don't have the loop, just like Wander in Death, draw 2 awesome cards, right? Dark Bargain, draw 2 awesome cards. That's more card advantage than most standard Pauper decks have. And you have the cheap interaction to kind of break up the early aggro draws and then just have the time to keep drawing cards until you eventually take over with a big 5 or 6 mana creature. So that's red-black control. The sideboard just wanted to have some more answers to hexproof creatures. So we have Divest. Target player reveals their hand. You choose an artifact or creature card from it. Try to get that Jade-like Guardian out of their hand before they can cast it. Try to get that Bastion Inventor out of their hand before they can cast it, or Soul of the Rapids, or Striped Riverwinder. Probably our best answer. It doesn't protect us from top decks, and this deck does kind of go long. So, you know, it's not the perfect answer to hexproof creatures, but it's probably the best answer. And then the next best answer would just be playing more Death Touch creatures. Unfortunately, many of the hexproof decks also play ways to give them flying, so the hexproof creatures might not, or the Death Touch creatures might not be enough to answer all the hexproof decks. The only way for this deck to have a chance against like a Jade-Light Ranger that's a 6/6 with a Cartouche of Knowledge on it would be to kind of race it with lifelink. You know, play Windgrace Acolyte, mill a bunch of cards, block their guy, and then do the loop to get it back each turn. But, you know, that takes a lot of time to set up. You need to have seemingly infinite lands, but You know, the deck, it's not stone cold dead to hexproof creatures, it's just really bad against hexproof creatures. So, you know, these slots could be, you know, more Windgrace Acolytes, maybe more lifelink creatures. I don't know, but the deck definitely needs more answers to hexproof creatures. So we're playing one Shatter. Just, you know, this deck is pretty good against equipment. Hone Kopesh does kind of make some of our damage-based removal kind of awkward. So, but I don't think we want to play too many more Shatters, because drawing Shatter when they don't have the equipment feels really bad. Against the aggro decks, just having more redundancy on 1 mana removal. You know, tokens, if tokens is a thing in your metagame, these could very easily be dual shots or blazing volleys. But I think just having more 1 casting cost interaction is good. Contract killing is, you know, if your opponent is playing big green dudes, you know, if they're playing like a Rampaging Baloth deck or a Greater Sandworm deck, or, you know, a Thriving Rhino deck, which might be able to get out of range of these spells pretty quickly. Contract killing kind of shores that up nicely. And then we're playing 4 Duress. In the control mirror, you know, if you are playing against a control deck that is just playing Striped Riverwinder as its win condition, and, you know, no other creatures, you're going to want Duress to kind of kneecap them on card advantage and keep them from countering your card advantage. You know, they'll probably have cancels and negates in their deck, which line up really well against Wandering Death and Dark Bargain, so you want to have Duress to get that counter out of their hand so you can resolve your card advantage spells and start looping things. So we got 4 Duress here on the board. So, you know, I played 3 rounds at FNM. I went 3-0. You know, as I said, the whole metagame for this format is creatures, so I think that this deck is incredibly well positioned. You know, give it a try, and let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions, would love to hear them. If you have any feedback, you know, we read every comment that's posted, so thank you to those of you who comment. And before we wrap up and sign off here, just one more time, check out our Patreon page. 100% Patreon funded, so thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers, and you know, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without you, so thank you once again. Alright, thanks for stopping by, and hope you enjoyed the deck tech. Leave a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on Standard Pauper content, and I will catch you later. Peace.